Can women make good Secret Service agents? It was a question a lot of people asked after watching the shooting of Donald Trump. The first thing to note is that every one of those agents is brave, men and women alike. Bullets are flying, and all of them literally put their bodies between a scumbag with a rifle and the former president. Every one of them defines the word bravery. But as we watched more closely, we see an exposed head of the president towering over a small female agent. Another looks like she's cowering behind the scrum. Now, I'm not sure how fair that photo is, and we'll get into it later, but this footage certainly appears to show agents with clear signs of hesitation and confusion. As the agency pushes towards a goal of 30% female agents, it's fair to ask, is this really the place for diversity and inclusion? Or is that a nod to gender politics that endangers the very lives the Secret Service is sworn to protect? Hi, I'm Ken LaCourte. This isn't a video where I'm going to rant and rave, but take a close look at what really makes a good Secret Service officer. I'll show you areas where women often fall short of those standards, and some interesting areas where they excel. America has had 4 presidents assassinated, which is almost 1 out of 10. So the Secret Service needs to be the A-team. Now, agents work on a wide variety of tasks, like advance work, threat assessment, and investigation. For the failures around the Trump shooting, the mistakes appear to have come from poor planning, the use of resources, and bad coordination, not necessarily those surrounding it. That team is called the Close Protection Detail, and they're the last line of defense. The agents who literally use their own bodies as human shields if necessary. It's an elite job that requires a very specific set of physical, mental, and psychological traits. So how effectively can women really do that job? As we evaluate that, we need to keep a few things in mind. Sometimes I'll be talking about the difference in averages between men and women. Now that can give us insight, but remember, humans have a lot of variability. Brienne of Tarth and Tywin Lannister are fictional characters, but the actors are real, and one would certainly protect the president a whole lot better than the other. We'll also talk about top outliers of the sexes, but you don't necessarily need to be the very fastest or strongest human alive to be a top agent. So with that said, let's look at the key traits needed to be a close protection bodyguard, and how men and women differ across 4 key dimensions: physical, cognitive, psychological, and interestingly, social. Wrestling John Hinckley to the ground after he shot Ronald Reagan took strength and speed. And even then, he fired all 6 shots in 1.7 seconds. Secret Service agent Larry Buendorf literally wrestled a loaded .45 out of a woman's hand when she tried to kill President Ford in 1975. The close protection detail needs to be strong, fast, and able to fight. And however you slice it, most men have a clear physical advantage. When it comes to those characteristics of muscle mass, size, speed, reach, across the board, males dominate. It isn't sexism, it's basic biology. The average man has 40 to 50% more upper body strength, thicker bones, tougher ligaments. It's why we have separate categories for men and women in every sport you can think of. Speed matters too. And here, men still have the advantage in reaction times and overall speed. When a split second could mean life or death, those differences matter immensely. There's never been a woman who's competed in professional football, baseball, or basketball. And in raw physical terms, the best female athletes in the world often can't compete with even above average males. That's just reality. Now, I'm almost 60 years old and I'm no athlete, but I could still overpower the vast majority of women. Even then, I wouldn't hire me to be a bodyguard. Now, I may have no problem in hiring Ronda Rousey, but she's a very, very rare woman. You need serious muscle to subdue an attacker, carry a wounded president to safety, or block a bullet. An assassin won't care about gender equality and will look for vulnerabilities.
The White House got broken into while Obama was in office. The first time in over 100 years that someone broke into the White House. Also, the first time a girl was guarding the front door by herself. There's no physical equality, folks. That's why we have the Olympics.
And when you're a human shield, the size of that shield matters too. The average female in America is 5'4", and if they're protecting a taller person, that's gonna leave a lot of head exposed. At 6'3", Donald Trump is 3 inches taller than the average WNBA player. And as brave as this agent was during the shooting, Donald Trump's head, the last place he'd want to get shot, is wide open. Biology just didn't distribute physical traits equally, and when it comes to brawn, few women can stack up. But how about brains? Now, I'm going to keep this one short because while there are definitely differences between men and women's cognitive abilities, they're usually fairly small and done in narrow studies that I'm not sure they tell us all that much. Men outperform women on mental rotation tasks, the ability to visualize 3D objects. Men also score higher on targeting tasks, like aiming at a moving target. And on the flip side, women have the cognitive upper hand when it comes to remembering faces and recognizing facial expressions and emotions. Those skills are valuable in noticing a suspicious face in the crowd or reading between the lines in a conversation, all things that would help a Secret Service agent. But what about the higher-level psychological traits? How do men and women differ in their emotional wiring and decision-making under pressure? Here, the differences are more striking. When bad things happen and a split-second decision can mean life or death, that's when psychological differences between men and women would become the most apparent. And the research here is quite clear. Under sudden, extreme stress, men tend to have the psychological edge. Male bodies release stress hormones that increase their heart rate and breathing. While sometimes they flee, it's invariably men who respond more aggressively to confront the threat and move towards danger. That's an important trait for protective work, and when an attack happens, you can't afford to panic or hesitate. On the other hand, women often exhibit what psychologists call a tend and befriend response. It's influenced by the hormone oxytocin, which can lower blood pressure and make them more inclined to seek social support or to offer to help others. Those hormones can also intensify emotional experiences, sometimes leading to more visible stress responses. Women screaming in a crisis situation isn't just an internet meme. That brings me back to this picture that made the internet rounds. Now, that's not a good look, but photos are a millisecond snapshot in time. This is the best footage from behind the podium that I could find, and I never saw that agent cowering like in the photo. Now, maybe it happened earlier, or maybe it was a split-second look, but the video makes me wonder about the fairness of that picture overall. So, one of my hobbies, judge me if you will, is to watch the YouTube channel Police Activity, which is unedited body cam footage that most police departments now release after a police shooting. You'll learn a lot by watching them. I can't quantify what I've seen there, but when you watch enough, some patterns clearly emerge. Besides female bystanders screaming, which is definitely a thing, it's impossible to ignore that many female cops react poorly when things get ugly. Besides being more easily overpowered, they often initiate physical action after it's too late. Male officers are more comfortable using force when needed, without hesitation. On the flip side, it's almost always the male officers who overreact, either escalating a situation in an ego display or using violence before it was really necessary. When it comes to de-escalating potentially problematic situations, women have a clear edge. And at first I thought that had little to do with the Secret Service role, but think of a fundraiser or a dinner where a guest, maybe a supporter, had too much to drink and is becoming a bit problematic. There are many situations where a tough guy approach might not be the best. The stereotypical male strengths, stoicism, decisiveness, aggressiveness, are vital in those rare but critical attack situations. And meanwhile, the classical female strengths, emotional intelligence, social finesse, caution, those might be assets in the parts of the job that don't involve getting shot at. The ideal Secret Service team should have both. To me, it's clear that maleness is more essential for that core close protection role, where there's zero room for error and hesitation is deadly. We can't compromise on the ability to shield the president and neutralize threats. Now, I've focused on individual traits here, but I want to talk about social dynamics too, because Secret Service agents don't operate in a vacuum. They interact with the public in complex social situations. Let's be real. An imposing male agent with a deep voice and stern demeanor is going to have a more intimidating presence than a smaller female agent. That's not sexism, it's a fact of life in our society. People are more deferential and afraid of large authoritative men, for good reason. Again, you see this repeatedly in watching those police body cam footage. The mere presence of a physically imposing male agent could deter potential threats, command respect in a crowded room. When an agent needs to take control of a situation, the air of male authority could be vital. Think about it. I'm sure some exist somewhere, but I've never once seen a female bouncer outside of a nightclub. On the flip side, female agents have some unique social advantages of their own. In many contexts, a woman might be perceived as less threatening and more approachable than a man. They may blend in more easily in certain situations, like a campaign rally, and be able to keep a lower profile while monitoring threats. That's valuable too. And the Secret Service protects women, of course, and female agents could certainly have an easier time building rapport and trust. They may also have easier access to spaces and conversations that a male agent wouldn't. The Secret Service should use the best talent it can find. As of this moment, there's a bill going through Congress that would mandate the agency to judge applicants without regard to gender. To me, it makes sense to build a protective detail with excellence in mind, not trying to hit gender quotas or look good politically or have some bureaucrat feel better about themselves. And while female agents could do fine in the vast majority of protective roles at the Secret Service, the number of women serving in close protective detail, if based on skills, should probably be pretty small. You need the biggest, strongest, fastest, and most aggressive agents on that front line. That's just reality. So one thing I mentioned was some psychological differences between men and women. One that's true, but that's rarely talked about, is that women rate higher on neuroticism. That means they're likely to experience anxiety, fear, or frustration more than a man. It's a scientific fact, but why? There are some fascinating physiological and evolutionary factors at play. Hey, I hope I made you a little smarter. If we think critically in life, we'll get through it better. I hope you come back again.